Paul says to the Romans in Romans 12, verses 9 through 19, he says, let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Paul is demonstrating all these ways in which we can serve the Lord our God, right? He says, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another, not thinking ourselves to be higher than any other brethren, because we are all God's children. We are not higher than anyone else, right? Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continually instant in prayer, enduring to the end, right? Because when we are patient in tribulation, we begin to gain endurance, right? In any situation, enduring any circumstance, right? Rejoicing in hope, always, rejoicing in the Lord, always praising the Lord through everything, continuing instant in prayer, staying consistent in our relationship, in our conversation with the Lord. He also says, blessing those who persecute you, blessing them and cursing not, right? Because, like, God calls us, to love others as he loved us, right? And when we love others, when we love our enemies, when we bless those who curse us, right, we're not scooping down to their level, and we're actually, bettering ourselves spiritually and becoming more spiritually mature, right, by not stooping down to that level, because we know that cursing and all those things, they come from the enemy, right? So we are doing God's will and we are showing God's love towards others, even our enemies, when we, bless them and not curse them as they curse us. Rejoicing with them that do rejoice and weeping with them that weep. It just shows, being there for others, serving others, and just being in the presence of others in the time of need, and rejoicing in the time of, when the time is needed to rejoice, and being of the same mind one towards another, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits, right? Being of the same mind with one another, right? Because when we are not in the same mind with one another, that leads to disagreements, misconceptions. That leads to quarreling over words, and God reminds us to not become quarrelers over words, because it can ruin, words can ruin the person who hears them, right? So he reminds us not to quarrel over words, right? And to not be wise, not to think of ourselves highly than we are, right? And to recompense no man evil for evil, provide things honest in the sight of all men, right? Providing, not recompensing no man evil for evil, right? Not fighting fire with fire, not if somebody calls us out of our name, right? We don't go out our way to call them a name. We bless them. We say, oh well, I know who God says I am. You're still beautiful. Like showing love when others show hate towards us. Uh, and he says, if it be possible, as much as it lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Making the effort to just live peaceably with all men. The enemy is going to try to throw things like hatred, envy, and jealousy, and all these things towards your way to tempt you to give into bitterness, hatred, and all these things. But that's why he says, if it be possible, as much as it lieth in you, in your spirit, live peaceably with all men. Don't give in to the temptation of bitterness and a hardened heart, towards people, and just always be able to serve and love others just as Christ loved us. And never avenge ourselves, right? Because the Lord says, be still, I will fight for you. And he says, vengeance is mine, he will repay. So always remember, God got your back, and always give everything to God, but continue to show love to others, and develop spiritual maturity. All right.